Welcome back to Washington Journal. Our guest in this segment, Gerald Celente, author of Trends 2000. This is the book, Trends 2000, How to Prepare for and Profit for the Changes of the 21st Century. Open this up, though, to page 47. The recovery that wasn't. And near the bottom of the page, you write, all over the world, House of Cards economies built on foundation of low interest rates and glued together with derivatives, hedge funds, and other high-risk financial instruments have collapsed. As the economies went down, so did the currencies. Every front page this morning is talking about Korea. That's one of the trends you're talking about.
That's right. And this is just the beginning, unfortunately, of more to come. This whole economic boom has been built on the availability of cheap money. Borrow money cheap, high speculation. Just like the 20s. It's the same thing but different in terms that it's just other players in the marketplace.
As you look at Trends 2000, in fact, in the small print at the top of the book, it says they're coming, they're almost here, these trends. You talk about the millennium and the change. The trends that you watch and forecast, will this all be gradual, or is there something significant about that year 2000 when these trends will really accelerate?
Well, you know, by accident or design, there seems to be an energy of the millennium. For instance, never before have so many people lost confidence in so many institutions simultaneously. Look what's going on again with this currency crisis. All of a sudden there's this kind of explosion. So a lot of the trends will evolve, but some of them are happening very quickly. And you know, as we look back to AD 1000, you know, the prophets of doom at the time had people leaving their houses, abandoning their crops, seeking refuges in churches, and going on pilgrimages to the Holy Land. So that kind of thing is also happening simultaneously.
You are founder and director of the Trends Research Institute, of which this is a product. What does the Institute do, and what's its work?
Our work is very much what you did this morning. Current events form future trends. So what we do each day is we scour the news, looking for the important social, economic, and political events that are going to shape our future. We analyze those. What are the implications of those events? Just like we're doing what we're doing, you're doing what you're doing because of the decisions that you've made, the course of action that you've taken. The same thing holds true with a society.
We'd like you to join us with your questions and comments. About 15 minutes left in this segment this morning. Gerald Celente is author of this book, Trends 2000. He's founder and director of the Trends Research Institute. This book has been out since about the first of the year. The paperback edition just out in bookstores. So if you've had a chance to read this, we're interested in your thoughts, but also if you haven't, just joining our discussion, your thoughts on what's ahead for the millennium and as things change. We invite you to join us, 202-624-1111 for Democrats, the Republican line, 202-624-1115, and for others and independents, 202-737-6734, and our new email address is thejournal@cspan.org. Are there some trends that are more obvious than others? I mean, do some just jump out and others you have to dig for? What are the more obvious ones?
Well, health. Anything having to do with health, fitness, and nutrition. Huge market. We're an aging population. In 1970, the median age was 28. By the year 2000, 36, and another couple of years after that, we'll be hitting 40. So anything having to do with health, fitness, and nutrition are the obvious ones. The less obvious are what we're looking at. We believe there's going to be an alternative energy source developing very shortly, sooner rather than later. Something to take us away from fossil fuels. Not very obvious, and it's against the conventional wisdom of the day.
What are some of the trends that are less obvious that you've found and are following?
Well, some of them that are less obvious is this change where people are going to be living together for reasons other than sex, marriage, or emotional companionship, just to make ends meet. This gap between the rich and the poor is going to really change the way society lives and how we age. So we're going to see more communal type of living, more co-housing, more shared housing. So this is something that society's not preparing for.
You say society's not preparing. Should government be preparing for this?
Absolutely. We're going to be facing a crisis of proportions that we've never seen before. This is an astounding statistic. There are as many single households in the United States as there are married couples with children. What happens when this massive baby boom population ages and they're faced with chronic degenerative diseases? Who's going to be taking care of them? Nobody. They're on their own. So we can say, well, we don't need a social system to do that. Fine, if that's the choice that we make. But the problems are going to be there, and families won't be there to help. So can we rely on a government to do it? Is the government part of the family?
The book is Trends 2000. The author, Gerald Celente. First call is from Knoxville, Tennessee. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, and thank you very much for C-SPAN. It's, in my view, an oasis in an otherwise barren desert of television wasteland.
Thank you.
I don't have a paper yet this morning because it's at the end of a long driveway, and I usually pick it up getting out to work. But I would like to offer a comment about the subject your guest is talking about, and give you an anecdote as to why this is gaining some import in the country. And one of the things that's kind of impressed me over the past few weeks is many of your guests who come from inside the lunatic loop up there don't seem to understand why there's such a great amount of angst and unease out here about the economy and the state of things in the nation. And one thing that's happened here is that Levi Strauss operates 3 plants in this town, and they've just announced that they'll be shutting down 2 of them, along with some others around the country. And of course, they won't say it, but they're moving their manufacturing to their plants overseas. Now, along with that, if you go into a store, you really can't find anything manufactured in the United States anymore. Everything's made in China or Korea or someplace, Mexico, places like that. And then on top of that, you've got our government sending money, huge amounts of money, to bail out these other economies overseas. And all of that just doesn't seem to sit right, with us out here among the great unwashed. And it's baffling and confusing and a little bit annoying.
Thanks, Knoxville.
Well, that's part of what I said before about never before have so many people lost faith in so many institutions simultaneously. We had an election in 1996 that virtually, only 48% of the eligible voters went out to participate in. There is really this dichotomy of belief between the people and the government, and what this gentleman is expressing runs very deep throughout society.
And this is just in the very beginning of the book. It's not even one of the chapters, but a part of the chapter on the morning after is a segment called Junk News. I want to ask you about that. What is it?
Well, we know, everybody knows the name of Clinton's dog. We know all about JonBenet Ramsey. We know all about the life of O.J. Simpson and on and on. But in the meantime, people are not seeing the current events forming future trends. I'll give you an example. July 18th, we were doing some work with Xerox. They had brought us in, and they asked us, how do we track trends? And we picked up the paper that day, and we said, here, look through the paper. You won't find this as a headline story. The currencies are beginning to unravel throughout Southeast Asia. Instead, that day, CNN announced that they were going to be at the auction of O.J. Simpson's house. So this is what's happened to the news. This is what they call news. And what really, and they say it with a high level of arrogance, too, that this is the news. It's not news. It's junk. We don't need to know that stuff. And because people are so inundated with this junk news, they're not able to see the current events forming future trends.
Denton, Texas. Good morning.
Morning. I really had 2 questions, and he's partially answered one, and I'm very concerned about the political cynicism of the day. If you want good people to run for government, then you don't trash your politicians all the time, and it seems like there's more of that, not less. And my second question has to do with the environment, because I'm very concerned that the United States seems behind the rest of the world. We're the greatest polluters in the world, and yet we don't seem to be able to step up and take our responsibility. Does he see that changing in the future?
Before we get to the environment question, let me ask you, because in our earlier segment we talked about cynicism. What do you see as a solution?
Well, I don't know. I guess that's why I'm calling in. I'm just very concerned that, I remember growing up that there was an honor to being a senator or a president or a representative, and I grew up in the Midwest, and I remember that even when my parents disagreed with whoever was in office, there was a respect to that. And, I'm just tired of of the focus in the media on all of the scandals, and it seems like people are in the pockets of special interest. How do we get back to this earlier time of having trust in people we elect and believing that they might actually be good, decent human beings trying to do the best for us?
I mean, I'm from the Bronx originally, so what they call soft money, we call bribes, and people realize this. So in order to get trust, you have to have actions that warrant trust, and that's not happening in politics. Everyone knows that we no longer really have a representative form of government. They feel that the government is paid for and bought by special interests, and it's obvious. And they say, of course, this isn't influence peddling, but in fact it is.
She also asked about environmental issues.
Oh, as you know from the book, we front-load the book with the impending environmental disasters, and it's very true. The United States has taken a back seat. There were high expectations when Clinton got elected that he was going to be the environmental president, and it didn't happen. We believe that's going to change, and one reason why is this Generation Y, the children born around after 1978. This is the first generation that's being environmentally indoctrinated, taught about the environment in schools. So as they grow up, their interests and concerns excuse me, are going to be very different than a World War II generation and even an older baby boom generation that isn't as focused on this issue. Short-term, more environmental disasters. As a matter of fact, you can start looking at the environment as some of the proclaimed causes of wars in the future. Just as fires rage throughout Indonesia and affect the whole Southeast Asia, just as pollution escapes the borders of different countries, there's going to be a major focus on environment in the coming years.
Scriven, Georgia. Good morning.
Yes, this is William Howard in Scriven, Georgia.
Good morning.
Good to hear you this morning. C-SPAN's always one of my favorites.
Thank you.
Okay, I had a question for your guest, and it's concerning the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
How about all the baby boomers and post-baby boomers that are buying into the stock market right now? And when it comes time for the stocks to be sold as they retire, there is just not there will not be the population there to keep the price up. And what's going to happen with our stock market? Is it going to go through the floor? Or do you have any opinion on that or any insight?
We believe the stock market is going to move basically sideways. The downside risk, obviously, in 1998 is much greater than the upside potential. As far as the population is going to continue to increase. We're looking at about another 120 million people over the next 50 years. We are very concerned about the stock market long term. We believe that by the end of 98, 99, things are going to probably get a lot worse.
Was there anything you had to leave out of the book?
No.
You've looked forward, and everything that you think is going to happen is in there.
Well, yeah, you know, as much as you could see. But your ideas evolve after you write these, you know, and you keep looking in different directions. But the book pretty much says what we believe is going to happen. One of the, here's something we did leave out. We're going to see a new ism develop to replace, right now the world is overbalanced with what we call capitalism. And now as all of these economies begin to unravel, you can also bet there's going to be a lot of political unrest. Same thing, the one system, because these economies are not going to hold up. You know, when you read other papers, they talk about what's going on in Russia as the Depression. You know, they don't talk about it as a burgeoning democracy. And what's going on in Slovakia, in the Czech Republic, as well as many other Eastern countries, is really depression building. And so there's going to be a counterbalance of what has happened. So look for a new ism. That's something we haven't talked about.
Mentioned the book was out at the first of the year, paperback just out. As you see these trends evolving, as you suggested, will there be a new edition in another year or two to kind of catch up with how they have evolved?
Well, what we do is we have a newsletter, the Trends Journal, and that's how we keep ahead of it. But of course, I'll be doing another book probably in another 2 years.
If someone's interested in the Trends Journal, how do they get it?
1-800-25-TREND. 1-800-25-TREND.
Gerald Celente is author of Trends 2000, How to Prepare for and Profit from the Changes of the 21st Century. They're coming. They're almost here. Thanks very much
Well, thank
for being
you.
with us.